Oh, hello and welcome to the Burt Locker. I'm Burt Green. This is the MMA show. Getting back to normal scheduling. I was a bit under the weather last week. Had the flu or something. Don't know what I had, but yeah, it did knock me for six a little bit. Still feeling it a little bit now, to be honest. But there are some big fights on at the weekend, and there was actually a really good event on this past weekend as well. If you're new to this, basically, I just like to talk about mixed martial arts. There's a bit of like humour thrown in. I don't like to take anything too seriously. I also do fight previews, all good stuff like that. So hit subscribe if you fancy it. And yeah, so we're going to take a look at, I think it's like UFC Vegas 81. I think that's what it was. And obviously looking forward to UFC 294 from Abu Dhabi, which is going to be the next event this week. So let's get cracking. So our biggest takeaways from the event at the weekend. I only watched the main card. I was very busy. Yeah, went to go watch the NFL. The Titans against the Ravens. It was excellent. It was top tier entertainment. I was playing the defense and the kicker for the Ravens in my fantasy team. So yeah, came off pretty good. Ended up winning as well. Pretty nice. But the event itself was really good. UFC Vegas 81, I believe it was. I haven't actually properly checked, but I know it was at the Apex, and the one before it was UFC Vegas 80. So stands to reason, unless they had some special, country's Independence Day that they were celebrating or something, then it's going to be UFC Vegas 81. So let's just stick with that, shall we? Biggest performances for me. You have Michel Pereira, who knocked out his opponent just with a lovely punch, just absolutely dropped it, and that was at middleweight. That's interesting. I didn't realise that Michel Pereira was heading up to middleweight. That could be a problem. Dude looks very fast at middleweight, very powerful as well. You start putting him in the. I would like to see him in the mix. There's a few people that you could put him up against. I mean, do you put him against like a Dreykus or a Bobby Whittaker already? Probably not. It's probably a step too far. Either way, there's a lot of fun matchups to be had at middleweight. Maybe when Paulo Costa decides to come back, you could throw him in there against Michel Pereira. That's a fight. That is a fight, isn't it? Come on now. Tell me you wouldn't want to watch that. I'd love to watch that. Then the other guy that looked really good, Jonathan Martinez. Now, I did pick Yanez, not because I wasn't discrediting Martinez, honestly. I just thought that, for me, I just thought that Yanez, he just had such good boxing, but then I completely forgot about Martinez's leg kicks. They're so vicious. Oh my goodness. He just hit one of them and that basically ended Yanez's night. Because that just, when they're executed that well, because that's the second stoppage, I believe, now that Martinez has got via leg kicks. There's only a couple of guys who used to stop people kind of, consistently with leg kicks. I think Pedro Hizo was one of the guys back in the day. Was it Rico Rodriguez? One of the two. Might have been both. Either way, they were big leg kickers. Pat Barry had some big leg kicks. I'm pretty sure he had a stoppage due to leg kicks. Justin Gaethje, obviously. You've seen how he attacks the legs, especially the low legs. The calf kick attacks. And Martinez does it as good as anybody, honestly. All he did was land one inside low calf kick, done. That leg was done. And then after that point, Yanez was basically on one leg. And honestly, that could have been stopped probably like before they did. Fair play to Yanez. Yanez, he wants to be called now. Yanez, I believe he Americanized the pronunciation previously. Has decided he doesn't want to do that anymore. That's fine. Yanez, it is. He showed incredible toughness in not looking for a way out. There's a lot of people that might have just kind of gone to the floor and been like, yeah, my leg is toast. He didn't do that. But the way he was yelping, God, go back and watch that fight. If you haven't seen the fight, watch Jonathan Martinez against Adrian Yanez. Yeah, very, very good. Don't know who's next realistically for Martinez, but I don't know. He might struggle to find somebody in the top 10 that's willing to test out those leg kicks. That could be a problem. Like, you put on a performance as scary as that, you might find that you have problems getting somebody to be like, I don't really want to risk my ranking against somebody who's that dangerous. Then you had the main event. What was the co-main event? Oh, I forget. It was Araujo against Maya, and I can't actually remember who won. That's how scintillated I was. But it was a good fight. I do remember watching it. It was a good fight. I can't remember who won. Decided not to make any notes for this one. So I've not been well, guys. I've not been well. But the main event was good. I do remember the hell out of that. Edson Barboza against, is it Siddiq Yusuf? Yusuf started strong. They kept on talking about it being like a 10-7 round in the first round. I don't know if it was a 10-7. I mean, it could have been a 10-7. I said they're trying to get more 10-8s. They're trying to make it so that if it's just a clear round, that's 10-8, regardless of whether it's a knockdown or whatever. But either way, started very strong, almost got Barboza out of there, really had him on wobbly legs. Then round 2, Barboza kind of rallied, probably still dropped the round, but he put up a good performance. And then in the third round, he landed, I think it was in third or fourth, but it was third round, yeah. Third round, he landed one of his signature spinning back kicks, like the one that he knocked out Terry Etten with back in the day. You'll have seen it on highlight reels if you haven't seen it. You just type it into YouTube, you'll recognise it. If you're an MMA fan, I'm pretty sure it's been on several highlight knockout vignettes or whatever. But yeah, it was a really, really nice kick, and that nearly got Yusuf out of there. And from that point, it seemed like Barboza's conditioning has actually come a long way. He didn't seem to get tired. He seemed to pick up the pace and just really started moving forwards and putting his opponent on the back foot. And that is what ultimately won him the fight. He looked really good in there. Barboza is far from done yet. He's still in. He's still a fun matchup to put on the main event of any fight night card. I think that Barboza should probably get into the Hall of Fame just because the amount of fun fights he's had. I believe he's now I believe he's now got the most fight of the night bonuses in the history of the UFC. I believe that is a record he now holds. So yeah, congratulations to Edson Barboza, commiserations to Yusuf. I mean, Barboza, he's only ever like a couple of good wins like that away from a title shot. You've got to get that man in the title picture at some point. He's just so good. He's so good, and he's so when Barboza is on, he is on. Do you remember the beatdown that he put on Dan Hooker? I don't know if you remember that as well. Everyone thought Dan Hooker was probably going to beat Barboza, right? And then Barboza reminded everybody that day who the hell he is. He's a dangerous, dangerous man, and he's just spectacular to watch. He's getting towards the end of his career now, more than likely. So enjoy watching those kind of performances while you can. That fight, not for nothing, took two to tango. Yusuf, hats off to him as well. He was absolutely outstanding. It was an all-out war, that fight. 5 rounds of all-out, just war. Brilliant, back and forth. That is what MMA is all about. There's some takedowns mixed in, good clinch work, good knees, good elbows, good kicks, good kickboxing, good boxing. It was all very, very good. Enjoyed it thoroughly, and yeah, excuse me. So that was UFC Vegas 81 in a nutshell. My bets were absolutely terrible. Okay, yeah, and yeah, Cameron Simon, he got his first loss as well. It was a competitive fight, lost the decision. Just thought I'd mention that. That was just something else that popped into my head. Anyway, so we're going to be looking at the news. Before I do that, just if you want to kind of keep track of what's going on the channel, hit subscribe, hit the bell notifications. I do fight previews every week, usually they're casuals guys. Basically, they're designed so 15 minutes you get information on every single fighter, every single fight, up and down the card, from the early prelims to the main event, and it's designed just so that you can give you a flavour of what each fighter is about. Strengths, weaknesses, that kind of thing, just so that you don't have to spend 3 hours listening to a podcast to break it down in detail. Sometimes you just want an overview. You just want to know who's fighting, who's doing what does this guy do? Does this guy wrestle? Does this guy stroke? That kind of thing. So I'll keep it simple, keep it basic, but it's useful information, and it's just helpful so that when you're watching the card on Saturday night, you come across somebody that you otherwise wouldn't have known, and then boom, it's like, oh no, wait, yeah, he mentioned this. Oh, he might do this. It's that kind of thing. If that sounds good, then hit subscribe. So The fight's coming on this weekend. There's been a few changes. So now, rather than Paulo Costa, as I alluded to earlier, Paulo Costa is out of his fight with Khamzat Chimaev. They have now put together, it's official, Kamaru Usman versus Khamzat Chimaev at middleweight. Kamaru Usman is going up to middleweight. That's interesting. That's very interesting for a couple of reasons. We saw Khamzat Chimaev. He had everything he could handle against Gilbert Burns. Remember that? Because Durinho he put a beat down on him in the later rounds. And no, Kamaru Usman, he's not going to be easy to take down and wrestle. He just isn't. I don't see that. I don't see Khamzat Chimaev being able to throw Kamaru Usman around like he did with Kevin Holland, for instance. Because Kevin Holland's like a jiu-jitsu guy. He's not really a wrestler. But Kamaru Usman is an elite level wrestler. This is going to be a really interesting matchup to see how the American freestyle wrestling stacks up against that kind of Eastern European, Russian Sambo style chain wrestling. It's going to be very interesting to see how it holds up, to see who gets the better of that. In the striking, I don't know who I'd give the edge to, honestly. I think maybe Kamaru Usman. I don't like I said, on the feet, Gilbert Burns gave Khamzat all he could handle and more. Very interesting fight. It'll be good to see Khamzat Chimaev back in there again, and it'll be very good to see Kamaru Usman taking a step up to middleweight. See what that. Johnny, he's lost twice to Leon Edwards. He's already widely regarded as one of the greatest welterweights of all time. He's got nothing really to prove in that weight class anymore. He might as well go up to middleweight, see how he goes up there. He's probably got a few more marquee fights in those knees. Make that money. Give us all the spectacles. People like that. I'm still a huge fan of Kamaru Usman. I'm not a massive fan of his interviews. His personality I find kind of grating, honestly, as many find about my personality. It's fine, sure, different strokes for different folks. But do I respect Kamaru Usman? Hell yes. Of course I do. Kamaru Usman is one of the most elite to ever do it. He's the Nigerian Nightmare, for God's sake. He's a scary, scary individual. You pack on pounds of muscle and remove the weight cut from that guy and throw him in at middleweight against some of those guys that maybe aren't so used to having an elite level wrestler kind of test them. Because you've got Bo Nickel coming up there, but who else is like an elite level wrestler at middleweight? What, Sean Strickland? No. Costa? No. Robert Whittaker's an all-rounder, but I wouldn't say he's like an elite kind of grinding wrestling style. Vittori got a load of takedowns against Kevin Holland, but that was by kind of opportunity rather than than that's what his style is. But if you're talking elite collegiate like wrestling at middleweight, there's not that many. There really isn't. And Kamaru Usman could be filling that void in middleweight. Interesting. Very interesting. If he smashes Khamzat Chimaev, because he took the fight on short notice, Dana White has already said that if whoever wins this one and they win it spectacularly, then that's a title shot next. Dricus du Plessis is furious, rightly so, because that should be his title shot next. I do believe that, but that's a story for another time. Yeah, very interesting. The fact that Dana White, says that it could be for a potential title shot just makes it even more interesting. It's fun. This is me signing up to that. I think it's very interesting. And then, of course, you've got the main event. You've probably heard by now that Charles Oliveira suffered a cut over his eyebrow in sparring, and he is out of that contest. Alexander Volkanovski is stepping up on 10 days' notice. He's jumping off the couch. He just had arm surgery. He's just like, yeah, screw it. Why not? It's not like I have to make weight. I walk around at about 155, so he's probably got about 10 pounds to cut. I think he probably walks around about 160, 165, and he's got about 10 pounds to cut, and he's like, yeah, I'm your man. I'll go there. And that's probably a slightly more interesting fight because, let's be fair, I'm not counting Charles out again in a rematch against Islam Makhachev by any means. I like that matchup just because I think that no two matchups are the same, and I was looking forward to seeing it. That being said, Charles Oliveira versus Makhachev was nowhere near as competitive as Volkanovski versus Makhachev, and that is just a solid fact. That is a fact. The fact that Volkanovski, in a lot of people's eyes, won that first matchup. Look, I don't necessarily think that he won, but I think that he gave Makhachev all he could handle and more. And I think if there was maybe one more round, like Volkanovski probably could have won that one. Because at the end of the fight, it certainly looked like Islam Makhachev was the beaten man. In fact, it was Islam Makhachev at the end of the first fight. Look, let's take away who won and lost. We all know that Islam won, Volkanovski lost. That's what happened on the scorecards, and that's it. That's the judge's decision. That is final. That's what goes into the record books. But one thing that I would note that I don't know how, because obviously Islam Makhachev's going to be very mentally strong. He's from that part of the world where they're just, all they do is wrestle and eat bears, or eat and wrestle bears, something. Wrestling and bears, basically. That's all they live for over there. It's like Joe Rogan, there's a quote where he talks about the reason these guys are so good from that part of the world is that they're all just super religious. They have their values, and all they believe is hard work. They don't go around drinking, chasing women, like whatever, driving Lamborghini boats or whatever. They don't do any of that stuff. They just grind. They just work harder. And that's why they're so difficult to stop. That being said, Volkanovski is also a very kind of, he feels like a very kind of blue collar guy. Do you know what I mean? He's also, you know, he's a family man. He doesn't go around doing stupid stuff for the most part. Well, I don't know him personally, but it just seems like he's all about getting better. His work ethic is kind of second to none. And that's the kind of guy that can cause problems for a guy like Islam Makhachev, a guy that can match his work ethic. And also the Craig Jones, his jiu-jitsu instructor, has really found a system that works against that Dagestan chain wrestling style. And it does. And it caused Islam all kinds of problems last time. And I think that and the other thing that I would like to note is that, look, it's probably not playing on Islam Makhachev's mind, but it could be. One thing for sure is that regardless of who won and lost that fight, before they announced the decision in the first fight, it was Islam Makhachev saying rematch, 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 because he thought he had lost. And he thought he had lost. Obviously, the judges gave it to him, and it was that was a fair decision as well. It was a close fight, and you have to score it per round. And based on that, I probably agree with the judge's decision in that regard. But Islam Makhachev thought he'd lost. Volkanovski went in there and put a performance on that was so impressive that Islam Makhachev believed he had lost at the end of that fight. And that is a powerful tool to take into Abu Dhabi on October 21st or whatever it is. Saturday. I think it's 21st. So I'm going to be watching the hell out of that. It's going to be really fun. Sorry, that got really intense there for a second, didn't it? Got really intense there. But I'm going to be doing a whole card preview for UFC 294. That's going to be coming up this weekend, and it's going to be, I think it's going to be a very early one, guys. I think us UK fans are getting an afternoon delight. I really hope so. Yeah, that's going to be a great night of fights. I'll be doing some terrible bets later on this week as well. I need to get my commissioner video out as well for my, I do NFL fantasy. If you're interested in NFL fantasy as well, I also have a few bits going on there. Just check out the channel. It's a fun time. I get a lot of stuff on there. It's good. It's fun. Until next time, keep those odds long and those bets terrible.